I'm Jason Hager, and this is Marketing Notes for Entrepreneurs from Grayleaf Media, where impact-driven leaders use trust, clarity, and strategy to turn good work into sustainable growth. This is the 5th episode in our series on how a wrong ICP cascades through your entire marketing system. Last time, we talked about how a wrong ICP breaks your positioning. Today, how it breaks your sales messaging. Every founder and salesperson has asked themselves some version of this question. Why does this feel like pushing uphill? You have a product that works, customers who love it, a process that should convert, and still, most conversations feel like convincing someone of something they don't want to be convinced of. The typical diagnosis is a sales skill problem. Better objection handling, a stronger close, more persistence. But persistence in the wrong direction isn't skill. It's stubbornness with a quota attached. The problem usually isn't how you're selling. It's who you think you're selling to. When your ICP is wrong, your entire sales approach is calibrated for a person who isn't in the room. The pain points you're addressing aren't the ones they feel. The language you're using isn't the language they think in. The objections you're prepared for aren't the ones they have. And unlike positioning, which plays out slowly over time in market, a bad sales conversation happens in real time, in front of a real human being, with no second chance. This is episode 13, How a Wrong ICP Breaks Your Sales Messaging. Let's talk about the difference between executing a script and actually understanding who you're talking to. The script isn't the problem. The understanding is. Scripts aren't the enemy. A well-built sales script is the result of hard-won understanding. It captures language that resonates, objections that are real, pain points that actually exist. Done right, it's a distillation of what works. But a script is a starting point. When you treat it as the destination, everything downstream breaks. The failure happens when salespeople learn the surface without developing the understanding underneath. They can recite the pain points because they never understood why the script worked, only that it did. So when the person in front of them responds unexpectedly, when they raise a concern that's not on the list or seem unmoved by something that usually lands, those salespeople have nowhere to go. They push harder or go quiet. A wrong ICP accelerates this failure. You've built your script around a fictional person. You've rehearsed pain points your actual buyer doesn't feel. Prepared objection handlers for resistance your actual buyer doesn't have. Calibrated your language to a mental model that doesn't match the human sitting across from you. When that human responds in unexpected ways, and they will, you have nothing to adapt from. You don't understand the underlying philosophy. You only know the moves, and the moves don't fit. Encyclopaedia Britannica built one of the most sophisticated door-to-door sales operations in history. Their scripts were deeply researched. Their salespeople knew how to build rapport, establish trust, and connect the product to a parent's deepest aspirations for their children. It worked. For decades. Because the ICP was right. The parent at the door was genuinely wrestling with questions of legacy, education, and investment. The sales approach matched the nature of the destination. Then the internet arrived, and the person at the door changed. The new buyer wasn't making a legacy investment in their children's intellectual future. They were a household that wanted quick access to information. They needed a fundamentally different conversation about a fundamentally different value proposition. The Britannica sales team kept executing the same script. The deep emotional conversations about legacy. The reframes around investment versus cost. The appeals to parental responsibility. Those weren't the objections the new buyer had. The script had been built for one ICP, and the ICP had shifted, and the sales team had no way to adapt. They weren't trained to understand the buyer. They were trained to execute against one. Transactional weight and conversational register. Most sales training assumes every conversation should sound roughly the same. It shouldn't. The weight of the transaction should determine the depth of the conversation. A major business investment, something that will reshape how a company operates, require internal champions, go through multiple layers of approval, carries real weight. The person you're talking to is carrying risk. They're thinking about what happens if this goes wrong. They need to feel genuinely understood before they'll move. This is a relational sale. The relationship carries the decision. A low-stakes trial, quick to implement, easy to reverse, priced accessibly, carries different weight entirely. This buyer doesn't need deep discovery. They need to feel confident quickly, see a real human, and understand what happens next. Treating this conversation like it carries that level of weight doesn't demonstrate thoroughness. It wastes both people's time and signals a misread of the situation. When your ICP is wrong, you often don't know which kind of conversation you're in, so you default to one approach. Founders who want to serve enterprise build deep relational sales processes, but their actual buyers are small business owners who want a clear answer and a fast decision. The discovery approach makes them feel studied rather than helped. They want to feel seen. They got a qualifying call. Or the reverse. Founders who serve individuals build a quick transactional pitch. But their actual buyers are operations leaders at mid-sized companies who are taking genuine personal risk by recommending this vendor internally. They needed a relational conversation. They got a demo and a pricing page. The ICP assumption didn't just give you the wrong script. It gave you the wrong conversational register entirely. That's harder to diagnose because the conversation felt professional. You answered their questions, but something was missing, and you couldn't name it. What was missing was the read, and the read only comes from understanding who you're talking to. The phantom objection problem. When you build your sales process around the wrong ICP, something specific happens. You prepare for objections your actual buyer doesn't have. You've mapped the resistance, built handlers for price, timeline, authority, need, practiced the pivots, prepared the case studies, and then your actual buyer raises none of them. They raise something else, something you didn't anticipate, something that reveals they're thinking about this completely differently than your ICP model assumed. Because you didn't prepare for this, you either dismiss it, awkwardly pivot to a handler that doesn't fit, or make a concession you didn't need to make. You've rehearsed a conversation with a ghost. The person in front of you arrived with concerns you weren't prepared for. The expensive version of this is a cold email sequence built on ICP assumptions. You craft the sequence for the person you think you're reaching. Pain points, language, call to action, all calibrated for your theoretical customer. The person receiving it isn't the person it was written for. The typical response is to push the sequence harder. More follow-ups, more urgency, more checking in. Because the script says these people should be interested. They're not interested because they're not the person the script was written for. More effort doesn't fix the mismatch. It just makes it more expensive. The discipline of deep understanding. The fix isn't abandoning scripts. The work is in understanding them deeply enough that they become internalized. So when a person in front of you diverges from the profile, you can move with them. Go back to the pain points in your script and ask what they feel like day to day for the person living them. Not the category of the pain, the texture of it. What does it cost them in attention, in energy, in the decisions they can't make because this problem is consuming bandwidth? What follows them home? When you understand the pain at that depth, you hear the shape of the problem and how they describe their week. You don't need someone to use the exact words from your script. You recognize what they're carrying, and you can respond to what they're actually saying. Do the same with your solution. Your script describes what it does. That's the surface. What becomes possible when the problem is solved? What tension disappears? What conversation can they finally have that they couldn't before? When you understand the relief at that depth, you can connect it to whatever the specific person in front of you is carrying. The version they need, not the version you scripted. Then there's the language. Different customers don't just use different words. They think differently about the same problem. An operations leader and a marketing director in the same company have fundamentally different frames for what efficiency means. Learn the vocabulary without understanding the frame, and you'll use the right words in the wrong context. The person across from you will feel a disconnect they can't name. Understanding how your actual customer thinks about the problem, not just how they describe it, is what allows you to translate in real time. That's what makes a conversation feel like you genuinely get them. This takes time. Patience and discipline that most people don't invest in because the results aren't immediate and you can't put them on a slide. But the payoff compounds. You stop needing to convince. The conversation changes. And in markets small enough for word to travel, being the person who genuinely understands the problem is a competitive advantage no script can manufacture. Here is what I want you to do this week. Pull your last 3 sales conversations that didn't close. Not due to timing or budget, but the ones that felt off. Ask yourself honestly, was I talking to the person in front of me, or to the person my script was written for? Then ask a more direct question. If I had to explain why my solution matters to that specific person, not my ICP, that specific person, could I do it? Or would I reach for the deck? If your instinct is to reach for the deck, the gap isn't the script. The work is in the understanding. I'm Jason Hager, and this is Marketing Notes for Entrepreneurs from Grayleaf Media, for leaders who believe profit and purpose don't have to be at odds. If your sales conversations feel like convincing instead of confirming, that's a foundation problem. It's exactly what brand therapy is designed to help you untangle. We help you build the understanding, not just the script. Start here at grayleafmedia.com/diagnostic. If you want to start on your own first, the ICP Toolkit is a free 15-page download that walks you through exactly who's buying from you and how to build your messaging around them. You can get it at grayleafmedia.com/findyourICP. Those are hyphens separated, so it's grayleafmedia.com/find-your-ICP. And if your sales process lives on a website that isn't converting the right people, we build and maintain WordPress sites designed to do the work before your team ever picks up the phone. To learn more, go to grayleafmedia.com/services. Next time, how a wrong ICP breaks your product or service. Why you built features nobody asked for, and what to do about it. Until then, go back to your last failed conversation. Find the moment where you lost the room. The script was still running when the human had already left.